Boom, boom, boom. Open up. It is the Sixers Talk podcast in your ear and here for your viewing pleasure as well. Hey, so glad you could join us here. And it's a game day. It may be a preseason game, but it is a game day. We are coming to you ahead of the Sixers Raptors in South Philly as the Sixers play their second preseason game, their first home game. Ben Berry joining us here, of course, on the podcast. Our producer extraordinaire, Noah Levick, is off handling best man duties. I don't think he would mind us saying that. He is a best man in a wedding, and he is off handling all that comes with that. So we wish Noah the best of relaxing, enjoyable few days off here. Ben, it is the first home game since Game 7, second round exit against the Atlanta Hawks. What kind of reception do you think the Sixers might get here in their home arena?
I think it'll be mostly cheers. The one person that they don't care for isn't there for the fans. So I think they'll be excited for the guys who showed up for training camp, the guys that are here putting in the work. So I think it'll be, for the most part, a positive reception. I don't think it'll be any boos because anyone the fans are upset at isn't here.
Isn't there to get booed, right? Just making sure the people, so we are clear, the people that will be there, Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris, who did not play in the first preseason game, as long as there are no setbacks. You know, Tobias had a banged knees with someone at practice, which is the reason why he sat out the first game. Joel Embiid obviously coming off that partial meniscus tear. They're going to, as we've come accustomed to, ease him back into the fold. But barring any setbacks, you should expect to see those two guys on the court tonight. I will be on the court tonight, NBC 10 News at 6 o'clock with a live report. So if you see me at the game, please say hello. Bit of housekeeping, Ben. I spoke to Kate Scott, and she will be coming on the podcast next week. She wants to be dialed in here on her first game. Got the blinders on here as she's preparing for her first broadcast on the television for this Sixers Raptors game, the new voice of the Philadelphia 76ers. Such a cool photo with her and Mark Zumoff that everyone saw on Twitter, I'm sure, with the Philadelphia skyline backdrop. So the changing of the guard has occurred. Kate Scott will make her voice heard to the Philadelphia community, the Sixers community here tonight. I'm curious, though, as we set up for this game, October 20th is what we're closing in on, which is opening night. Are your expectations for this Sixers team any different after that first preseason game? Did you see anything that jumped out to you that you're hoping to see more of in the second game, or something you haven't seen that you hope to see? Or what are you looking forward to with this game tonight, Ben?
I'm just looking forward to guys to get up and down the court to enjoy some basketball, even though it's preseason. The first preseason game hasn't changed my view or outlook on the season. I think the Sixers are a 5-6 seed in the East at best without Ben Simmons, unless they get a star player in return. I'm just happy basketball is back. I'm happy it's here in Philly. I'm excited to see what this team is going to do moving forward.
I think eventually the Sixers will make a Ben Simmons trade closer to the trade deadline, probably, that will vault them past that 5 or 6 point. Like, man, 6 seed is like narrowly avoiding the play-in game. So I that is such a fall from grace. I'm not prepared for that. You could join the likes of people like my dad and my daughter, who are both already jilted about the upcoming season. They're already feeling like they don't want to be let down. Their mental health needs a break from all that they've endured with this team. So they're not prepared yet for what this season might bring. So some people are easing their way into this Sixers campaign. And a lot has been said about this Ben Simmons stuff. As much as we try to talk about basketball, Ben, the drama surrounding Ben Simmons continues to inundate us with more and more information. Here we have another report from an excellent reporter, Kyle Neubeck of the Philly Voice, just really harping on the fact that the storyline that is coming from the Ben Simmons camp continues to deteriorate a little bit, whether you think it's slow or fast or what have you. But supposedly they, among the many things the article mentioned, is they went back and checked again with the Players Association to make sure there was no way that they could recoup or avoid the fines that are being accrued for Ben Simmons just holding out. So a hefty $300,000 plus fine was levied after missing that first preseason game. Hey, I know Ben likes the fancy cars and living the high life and whatnot, but one game is probably the cost of two of his cars, or at least one of them. That had to really hit home. I mean, you just bought a house, Ben. Imagine that type of setback in one game, one instance. They just sap your pockets. Not including all the training camp stuff that he's probably been fined too for missing those days as well. But what do you make of that? Can Ben endure all these fines that he's racking up?
No shade to you or anybody we work with, but if I could be fined $300,000, I wouldn't be working with you guys. Just
correct, because you would be showing up for work. Whatever that job was, you would be showing up.
Exactly. I would be right there. I can't afford to lose $5, let alone $300,000. So my takeaway from that report was either Ben Simmons himself or his agents, there was some form of miscommunication where I don't think they realized how much money that he would be losing for missing every game. Although, if I think back, it was originally reported only be $250,000 every game. $250,000, 300,000, 300,000+. A lot of money difference for you and me. For guys that have a supermax contract, maybe not until it starts to add up and looking to see what they can recoup. To me, it seems like maybe they're having second thoughts of their game plan moving forward. I still don't think Ben is showing up, at least no time soon. So it's very messy and odd that they weren't prepared to at least lose this much money. If it's already one game in, they're doubling back with the Players Association and see if they can recoup some of this money.
I had to take a little bit of a step back when I was thinking about this because, so much vitriol from Sixers fans, we talked about it here on the podcast, has been aimed at Ben Simmons and Rich Paul also as an offshoot. Obviously, the whole Tyrese Maxey thing that popped up, later in the summer that, he didn't want to be included in any Simmons trade and he wanted out of Philly supporting. That was a report from Jason Dumas, but they since, retracted some of that. But the reason I had to take a step back is because I'm starting to gain, I'm looking at the Rich Paul thing and I'm like, man, he's really doing a number on us. And, and then I look at, there's reported an Nerlens Noel stuff out there where he was suing Rich because there was a contract he could have gotten that he wasn't able to secure because it wasn't properly brought to his attention or something to that effect. And then obviously the stuff we're enduring with Ben Simmons. And I just had a little bit of animosity toward him, but I don't feel that way toward Scott Boras. I don't feel that way toward, any of these other, agents, World Wide West maybe, or any of the other movers and shakers in the basketball sphere who, handle each client separately and deal with each individual situation as it occurs. So why would I hold vitriol towards Rich Paul? I mean, regardless of what's happened with the Ben Simmons thing, it's just part of the business. And just because he's a young guy who I feel like is upsetting the apple cart here a bit in Philly unnecessarily, maybe at Ben Simmons' behest, maybe more, when you look at the Anthony Davis prototype of how he got out of New Orleans and into LA, who was a Rich Paul client, maybe some of that is rubbing off here. So I'm realizing like, well, why should I even care or lend my, anger toward Rich Paul when he's just a cog in the wheel, so to speak, and looking to establish himself. And he's doing the same thing that many other agents have tried to do, is service their clients, put them in the best situations possible. So I think Ben Simmons is the guy who is really pulling the strings, obviously, because it's his career, his future. So I think that I'm now more narrowly focused there than just the whole Ben Simmons camp, so to speak, which is something that, a lot of people have aimed anger toward.
Well, there's no anger for me at all towards anyone. I like chaos and I like to watch things fall apart. I find it wildly enjoyable. I definitely think it's Ben's decision. And I see the YouTube comments that say we're speculating this or that. Yeah, any talk radio or television, unless there's a confirmed report, like it's speculation, all in that analysis as well.
Particularly in this situation where you have so much coming from so many different reporters and directions, like every, it's a new spin, which, Kyle Neubeck's article pointed out is like, there's a new spin on how they're trying to, make it seem like Simmons is coming out on the high side of it.
Yeah, it's a new thing every day. You don't want speculation. I don't know what you're going to listen to on any Ben Simmons topic, but I think it's his call, whether he's receiving all the information or the best advice or consulting moving forward. I don't know. It just seems there might be many people in his ear, or maybe he's just not listening to what everything people are telling him, like, hey, you're going to lose this much money. This is going to happen. They're not going to trade you anytime soon. And he really wants to be moved. But for any team that's going to get him, there's been no proof that he's improved his offensive game. There's been no proof that he's mentally healed from what happened last year, because a lot of people are saying like he's mentally prepared for the grind this season. There's been no proof of that. And until there is proof of that, I don't see teams knocking out a door to trade him or acquire him unless they're going to get him on the cheap. I don't see the Sixers moving him anytime before, was it December 15th when new contracts can be moved? I don't see that happening. I can see this playing out to the NBA trade deadline.
Yeah, I think the NBA trade deadline is when the Sixers might be able to get some value as other teams realize their situations aren't quite what they expected or what they wanted to be. Here's an interesting question for you. Would you rather be dealing with the Simmons situation or the Kyrie Irving situation? Which of those things would you feel like you would be able to grasp a little more, handle a little more, massage, kind of work in your favor? Which one of those are you?
This is intriguing. The Ben Simmons thing, like if I'm a GM, or are we talking from the GM aspect or the agent aspect?
Well, I think, no, we're definitely talking from the GM aspect, because I'm like, man, like, any player that's available out there that's somewhere near all-star level, people, Sixers fans specifically speculate, oh man, like, oh, Ben Simmons for John Wall, oh, Ben Simmons for Kyrie. Like, he's disgruntled and Ben Simmons is disgruntled, so we can match him up type of thing. So it's like, yeah, go ahead.
I would go the Ben Simmons thing. If I'm Daryl Morey, Elton Brand, if I'm in the front office, you get to tell the players and Doc Rivers not to answer any questions about Ben Simmons. Someone asks, just don't say anything. Focus on the guys here and focus on winning with the players or everyone we have in-house. I feel like that's their best situation moving forward. Even though I love Joel Embiid's fight last week where he just let loose, I think that was, even though it was honesty, and I love honesty, it was more of a win for Ben Simmons moving forward. Now, Kyrie Irving, because you can try to move him, but if Kevin Durant says, I don't want him going, it's not happening. The Kyrie Irving thing, maybe you can talk him into getting a shot. I don't even know I'm trying to process this going forward. Maybe you can talk him into it, but it seems like he's standing firm on his stance. This is the hill he's not backing down on. So maybe I would take the Ben Simmons thing moving forward, because the Nets need Kyrie Irving. Definitely through an 82-game season when, they struggled with health last year. I know Kyrie was part of that. We haven't seen much of KD, Harden, and Kyrie on the court at the same time. But that just seems a lot more combustible when Ben Simmons isn't here already. How much worse can it really get for the Sixers? The Nets, they got to figure out how to win games when you don't know when you'll have Kyrie and when you won't.
Yeah, the Kyrie thing is just so ongoing in a way, like, like you said, we can have like a blanket response to people when they ask the Simmons question that, he's not here. So, you can avoid and deflect and what have you. But the Kyrie thing is like, he's going to be here some games. He's going to not be like Brooklyn having the vaccination mandate. So like, he's a part-time player immediately if he's not getting vaccinated. So you probably will only have him available for 41 games. I don't even know what that means for practice, if he can even practice with the Nets.
Nope.
Particularly with the restrictions the NBA has put in place for unvaccinated players. But even on the road, you won't even guarantee, you're not even guaranteed to have him for 41 games on the road because other cities have vaccine mandates. California and in general, any teams you play out there, you're going to have vaccination issues. So as far as convincing Kyrie, he has caused so much of an uproar to this point. Why would he even acquiesce to getting the shot now? You see Andrew Wiggins had a moment of clarity, and suddenly his religious beliefs have faded away a bit, and he's able to get the shot. But the Kyrie thing, I feel like there's really no answer. Simmons, you find a trade partner, suddenly there's like some simpatico moment where everybody could possibly be happy. But the Kyrie thing is like, you can't trade him because no one wants to deal with that headache. He's not going to play. This is the dude who took time off to celebrate his birthday. Like, he left the team to go celebrate a birthday. Like, I just feel like if the Simmons stuff can, you can get to the table and figure out, a suitor who wants to have him, like that can be resolved. Like the Kyrie thing, I just feel like there's no end in sight. So I just felt like it was an interesting comparison.
Well, Wiggins is not the player Kyrie is, so I don't think teams are. The better you are, just in any sport, in any team sport, the more a team is willing to work with you. That's just what it is. Wiggins isn't. He's playing better in Golden State than he did in Minnesota, but he's number 4 on that team at best, probably below Wiseman, so 5. Kyrie, he's won a championship. He is a perennial all-star. Teams are going to work with him. It's just not going to be the same way with Wiseman. I mean, not Wiseman, Wiggins. Yeah, the Kyrie Irving thing it's just messy. You think the Ben Simmons thing is messy, but the Kyrie Irving thing is messy. The Sixers can either just act like he's not here until they get a trade partner, or just act like he's not here altogether, whether he's stuck here for another year, which would be very entertaining to watch. So I would definitely go with handling the Ben Simmons situation.
Right. And even though the Simmons thing is unprecedented, it's something you can wrap your head around with, okay, disgruntled player, we need to find a trade partner. He doesn't want to report. Like there's like a bit of a precedent, even though it's unprecedented, you can kind of understand this. But the Kyrie, the vaccination thing, it's like a black hole of well, what about this? And I don't want to do that. And, I shouldn't have to be vaccinated. And, it's just like, it is never ending back and forth. Like when I get into an argument with my son and he's trying to like justify why he should be able to stay up an hour on a school night when, he didn't finish his homework on time or something. Like, it's just like, he's just trying to justify and go back and forth. But I just feel like the Simmons thing can come to a natural end.
That's what you get for engaging with them. That's exactly what you get for engaging.
Hey, bro, and definitely giving them a voice.
Hey, you doing this? You doing this? No ifs, ands, or buts about it.
That is how I was raised. That is how I was raised. We try to give kids a voice, and they run away with it.
You give them a foot, they take a mile.
You're right about that, bro. How about this though? Talking about giving a foot and taking a mile. We got this Kyle Neubeck article, great reporting. He's quoting a source that's familiar with the conversations between Simmons camp and the Sixers, where Simmons camp is trying to explain to the Sixers that part of the reason Ben Simmons doesn't fit in Philly is because the expectations were too high, too fast, and he didn't get time to develop as an individual and a player, where normally number one picks, number one overall selections, like Simmons was, have time to work their way and develop on a lesser team, where the Sixers were winning games before he got here and expectations to win a championship to pay off the process. And he came and had hit the ground running and didn't get the proper time to develop and become who he should be. Like, what?
I read that. You know who has gotten a lot of time to develop on bad teams? Andrew Wiggins, who he was just talking about. Karl Anthony Towns. Zion Williams, 2 years in the league. I mean, Anthony Davis, who was in New Orleans for, 7 years? Went to the postseason once, maybe twice. Like, yeah, those guys made all-star teams and things like that. But, you're on a good team. Most players want to end up on a good team and
want to be on a good team. Don't you want to win right away?
Like I'm a firm believer that, like, yes, the greats are greats, but there's some players that aren't as bad as we think. They just end up in a bad situation. Like, for example, the Patriots have been the cream of the crop in the NFL for the past 20 years. How many players that went to Cleveland would have a different career if they were in New England and not Cleveland? If players,
200%.
let's say, didn't end up in Detroit with the Pistons and ended up in, I don't know, let's say in Miami with the Celtics, I can't say the Sixers because outside of Joel Embiid, the draft hasn't been that great over the past decade. Some good finds, but whatever. But if you end up in a situation like with the Lakers and stuff like that, it's just good organizations overall, your career can be completely different. That excuse from Ben Simmons it was such a reach. I wonder if he just threw out his shoulder. It was so bad. It wasn't believable. You had a good organization that everything isn't falling on your shoulders to turn things around. Like, just say you don't want to play here. Don't give it. We know you don't want to play here. Just say that. You don't have to say, this or that. I didn't get time to develop. If you want time to develop and you end up in one of the teams in LA or one of the teams in California outside of Sacramento, like, are you going to really develop that much more? Because those teams are in win now mode.
Bro, it's just such desperation, just reeks of them grasping at straws. If you just look at like the number of reports that have come out with Simmons never wanting to return to Philly to play in front of fans, Joel Embiid and him aren't compatible. You got this supposed report about, him not being able to develop properly because the team was good right away. Like, it is just so, like, and that's part of the thing when I talked about the Rich Paul thing is like this is the way you're going about this. Like, this is how, like you're just like using different media members to like cast dispersions like on the team and the situation and like try to, water down the public sentiment of how people feel about you. And well, the truth is that what happened in Game 7 on the court, that's the truth. All this other stuff just seems like fluff and just like anything they can do to like discredit the Sixers or make it seem like it's one way and not another. I want to, Noah made a good point on the last podcast that a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter in the basketball sense of trying to find a suitor for Ben and whether or not his value is up or down. Like, a lot of the reports like don't really factor into that. But I do feel like some of this stuff, like this thing about him not having an opportunity to grow and things like that, like it starts to that loser mentality. Like is this dude like really like just full of himself and like will never be what he's supposed to? Like that some of that starts to seep in, I think, because some of these reports which say how he feel, which we haven't heard from Ben, which we would love to kind of clear some of this stuff up, but some of that stuff starts to seep in. Like, man, is this dude really like shooting himself in the foot? Like, is he really a defensive player of the year, all-star caliber player, or is he kind of like have a loser's mentality of like, I'm taking my ball and going home because I can't get my way type of thing. Like, you might not want that in your locker room. You know what I mean? But I'm gonna take Noah's perspective on this. All this stuff doesn't factor into the basketball stuff, but as you read it, as you see it, it's hard to differentiate between some of the things.
To me, it goes back to a point I made in the beginning, top of the pod, and it's just been a recurring thing his career. It's accountability and responsibility. Whether it was after that Game 7 loss and the media was asking him about not shooting, he's like, well, I'll do all this. How many assists did I have? How many rebounds?
Right, he's trying to justify all the other things that he does well.
Like you somewhat put the clamps on Trae Young, who still put up 25 plus points, maybe even 30 plus points. But we're asking about why you're not shooting. And yes, you do many other things, but when the team needs you to shoot or dunk the ball, you have to dunk the ball. In previous postseasons, when he said that I've never played on a team where I had to shoot, like that should have been a red flag to the organization. Going back and forth with Jared Dudley, which, yes, it's Jared Dudley, which was his response, but it doesn't mean what Jared Dudley said wasn't inaccurate. In the half court, he slows down. He's not the same player. I mean, there was nothing inaccurate about that statement, but people got upset, and his response was just.
I think Dudley might have said he was average.
Average in the half court. All right, so he gave him more props than he deserved in the half court. Average player would have dunked the basketball. Average player.
It's weird, man.
At least 70% from the foul line.
It's hard to defend him in a lot of these situations. So, but like you said, coming from Jared Dudley, it's like, wait a minute, like you're Jared Dudley, like slow down. But hey, bro,
it doesn't make what he said inaccurate. It's just
Simmons has brought a lot of it on himself. In those moments where he could, change the narrative or stem the tide, he, doesn't really rise to the occasion in those moments. And it's so upsetting, not upsetting, but disappointing in the way that we have to spend like half of every podcast talking about Ben Simmons drama instead of like the guys who are here, which I think is a great point by the team, Joel Embiid and whatnot. Just like we owe it to the guys who are here to try to work with what we have rather than worry about whether Ben is going to show up. So our next segment will deal less with Ben and more on the team and the people that are here. But it's just hard to escape. It's hard to get away from as, the season comes to a head here and is about to begin. Do you feel like the Sixers can endure answering the Simmons questions every stop that they make until this resolved? Do you feel like it might, seep into the team and like, change their approach or anything like that?
If they put a hard stance on not answering any questions about any players that's not in this locker room, they can endure it. If they have to answer something every time Ben Simmons or Rich Paul put something out into the media, every report that this is why he doesn't want to be here, or this is where he wants to go. If they just say I'm not answering questions about that, it's the end of it. Because a reporter can continue to try to ask questions, but that runs the risk of ruining for the rest of the reporters in the room or on Zoom. I'm just saying, all right, I'm done.
Well, we're not answering any more questions on this podcast about that. How about that?
Start college, build skills, and complete your degree with Wilmington University. 100% online options and affordable tuition makes WilMU work for you. Learn more at wilmu.edu.
Yeah, preseason game number 2 for the 76ers as they look for a little revenge against the Raptors. They fell up in the Air Canada Center, first game in Toronto in quite some time, at least a year and a half. A lot of things happened in that game. Andre Drummond was a storyline because he came out horsing and played well. Isaiah Joe had 18 points. Interesting to see how all that factors into tonight's game. We're setting up for this season, and we're going to start talking about a few different things, but this is something you guys can check out as well on NBA.com is the 2021-22 GM survey. And among other things, Ben Simmons is right there among who GMs voted as one of the best defenders. He's right there near the top of the list. But curiously enough, Joel Embiid, after finishing runner-up for MVP, only 7% of the GMs think he will be the MVP this next season, where I know that that's something, if Joel sees it, will be a chip on his shoulder. He takes things like that personal. I have heard him say year after year that MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, are two of his goals to achieve. They don't consider him one of the best interior defenders as well. Rudy Gobert overwhelmingly won that title from the NBA GMs, although NBA GMs are known to be wrong. Do you feel like Embiid thrives on stuff like this? Like he sees this and is waiting for stuff like this in order to give him that extra little something on the court, Ben?
I think he'll use it or say it. However, I mean, you're a pro. That should be your goal anyway. If you say it's your goal beforehand, before the criticism or the lack of confidence even comes out from GMs around the league, go for it. He has a lot to prove this season with Ben Simmons most likely not being on the team. If he can carry the Sixers to a top 3 seed and play lights out, build on what he did last year and previously, yeah, it's attainable. I wouldn't say it's likely, though. It's the whole Ben Simmons thing. The team isn't as good without Ben Simmons unless they find someone as good back. And not to turn this about Ben Simmons, but it just puts more on Joel Embiid's shoulders. Who's going to be the primary defender for the other team's best player? Things like that. Joel, it's just so much more on Joel Embiid's plate. If the Sixers can remain a top 3 seed, yes, his chances are likely, but I don't see it. I mean, Jokic was the first big man to win MVP since what, Shaq? First center to win MVP since Shaq. So
yeah, and obviously, along with the MVP race comes the team expectations. So if the Sixers as a team aren't going to be as successful, which they're not without Ben Simmons, because he is a big factor into what they do and the success that they had last year with one of the best starting 5 units, with one of the best, him assisting on 3-pointers at an amazing clip. So with that said, you can't then, expect Joel to be at the top of those lists if the team isn't at the top of, competing for Eastern Conference, championship or an NBA championship. So some of those things are going to fall back to earth. So to Joel's point, which he made, a few days after media day, like Ben not being here is selfish in some aspects because it affects the other people that are here, and not necessarily at Joel's level, but the guys who are trying to, make a living and this is their livelihood and things like that. And the team success can beget success for them. But Joel is being affected a little bit by Simmons' absence because his chances of success of being, an individually great player are lessened a bit because Ben Simmons isn't here.
Yeah, it's who's in front of Joel Embiid is what, Luka Doncic, Giannis, and what, LeBron or KD, or the 4 players ahead of him?
You got it committed to memory, bro.
Oh, wow. All those are all great players. And the last year's MVP, 2020 in 2021 MVP, Nikola Jokic isn't even on there. So,
and I don't like Luka being like. Are the Mavs going to be like a top 4 team in the West? Are they going to be a contender for the NBA championship? Nah, they're not. Luka winning the MVP, you have to be virtuoso to win the MVP on a team that's not one of the top teams, like what Russell Westbrook, averaging a triple-double. Luka being a great shot maker and, incredible offensively and weak defensively, that doesn't equate to MVP, even though, GMs are giving them second best chance at winning it.
We've seen players win MVP that are amazing offensively and weak defensively.
But their
James
teams
Harden.
are good, though. But their teams are good, though.
James
I don't
Harden,
know if
Dirk Nowitzki. I think the only reason that team is somewhat good is because of Luka. Like that's the only reason that team is competing. I don't think people realize how bad that Mavs team is. So I think they have a possibility to be a top 4 team in the West. And if that happens, it's a good chance Luka could be MVP.
do I smell a bet that
We
Dallas
can
will
put a bet on
finish in
it.
the top 4?
Yeah, we can put a friendly bet on it. Yeah, what you want?
Okay. So you think Dallas will finish in the top 4 teams in the West?
I said it's a possibility.
Is that right?
I said it's a possibility, but if you want to put a bet on it, yeah, let's do it.
Well, I just guarantee they won't. So that's probably. I just know
Okay.
they won't be.
Well,
So,
all right, what do you want? What do you want if Dallas is in the top 4 team in the West?
well, the stakes. What will the stakes of the wager be? I don't know. It could just be a meal. You know what I mean? But if you want to get crazy, we can get crazy.
All right. We bet a meal on it. We'll bet a meal on it.
Okay. All right. There we go. And that's why these podcasts are fun, because we get to determine the outcome of my appetite through this podcast. So, hey man, listen, Joel is going to be one of, if not the best big men in the league. How that equates to the team success is the big problem, because so many fans are waiting for this payoff from all that they've endured. And Ben Simmons, in so many ways, is putting a wrench in the works of them trying to achieve these heights. So I think, Joel and his individual success is one thing. How the team plays is something different. I'm curious, I mentioned Isaiah Joe before, how those guys, that's what I'm going to be looking for, how those guys step up, how the backcourt players kind of soak up these minutes that are available because Simmons isn't here, the points and assists that aren't available. Who's going to be the person that's going to shoulder the load that's not named Joel Embiid or Tobias Harris? Who's going to be, and Seth Curry, who's going to be that person? Worth mentioning, they have who is the best pure shooter in the NBA is one of the questions they asked the GMs. Steph Curry got 90% of the votes right there, and others receiving votes in second. Seth Curry is right there, along with some other people, but Seth Curry, I would assume, got the second most votes behind his brother. I think that's something that he's a guy who I'm hoping takes a huge step forward. Because when he came here from Dallas, he said plenty of times people haven't been able to see what I've been able to do. He was slowed last year from the COVID stuff. Hopefully he's fully healthy this year and can, deliver on some of that throughout the season and not be, hampered by the COVID stuff, because he was coming out like gangbusters at the start of the season before he got sick. But I'm looking at the game tonight. I'm hoping to see Tobias and Joel, and I'm hoping that, their leadership can kind of shepherd them through this stage of trying to, deal with and navigate this whole Simmons thing. And unfortunately, it's just going to be hanging over our heads until it's resolved. But hopefully some basketball tonight will help cure and fix some of those woes Sixers fans are enduring.
I'm on the other end. I like it hanging over the Sixers' head.
Oh, Lord.
I enjoy chaos. I enjoy the
You're
content.
a villain. You're a villain.
It's fun.
You are a villain.
I'm not a villain.
It's okay to be a
anti-hero,
villain, bro.
I'm an anti-hero, if anything. I'm not a villain.
That's the same thing.
No, it's not the same thing. Not the same thing. Deadpool, anti-hero. Villain, Thanos.
Deadpool. That's the example you're going to use?
Yes.
This
everyone
dude,
likes it.
He has collateral damage everywhere he goes. So you just like wrecking shop and then trying to act like it's in the cause in the name of good.
I ain't say for the name of the good. I said in the name of me and my self-interest. That's what I'm rooting for. For the listeners, before we get out of here, because I know Danny's about to wrap up. We appreciate the comments, the views on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen. I definitely go through the comments. So I see all the positive. I see all you guys that hate Danny, Noah, or myself. I know it's going to be comments that say, "Oh no, this guy Ben is bad," but you ain't getting rid of me. You're stuck.
You felt like you had to get that out there before we signed off.
Well, I wanted to say thank you for the people that listen and watch and
I
subscribe
definitely,
or
man,
follow.
we appreciate
That's
you
all.
guys. The Paul Hudrick podcast did well, and I'm really excited that we got a chance to talk with Paul. This is just the start of a long season. It's our last podcast this week, but we'll be back next week with Kate Scott, as I mentioned. And hope you have a good weekend. Enjoy the game tonight. For Ben Berry and our guy Noah Levick, who hopefully is not doing anything that Ben wouldn't do, we appreciate you for listening to Sixers Talk podcast, brought to you by Wilmington University. Wilmu works. We'll see you next time.